Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Hello Kitty murder part 5. This is the tragic life of Fan Man Yi. On April 15th, 1999, the group would tie Fan Man Yi up and throw her into the bathroom, where the rest of them would go downstairs to an arcade to play some video games. And while they were out, Fan Man Yi would actually succumb to her injuries and pass away. She was only 28 years old. And she would be left there for a few days, and it wouldn't be until 3 days later when the group would arrive at the apartment and Ah Fong would walk into the bathroom and find the corpse of Fan Man Yi, to where she would go out and tell the rest of the group that she had passed away. They quickly started discussing amongst themselves how that she possibly may had passed away, and would obliviously suggest that she possibly passed away due to a drug overdose, but would completely negate the idea that she could even have passed away from the amount of injuries she acquired from the brutal beatings of over a month. Still unsure of what to do with Fan Man Yi, the group would then go back downstairs to an arcade to play some video games, and when they would return later on that night, they would just all quickly go to bed, still leaving Fan Man Yi's corpse laying in the bathroom floor. 3 days later would go by, and Chan Man Lok would address the rest of the group, and he would just look around at everyone and just tell them now she must be destroyed. The first thing they would do is they would take Fan's body and place it in the bathtub, and then take a handsaw, and the group would begin cutting up Fan Man Yi's body into sections. And the sectioned off body parts that they had cut off with a handsaw, they would begin crudely cutting up and placing into pots, and begin boiling them over the stove. Chan Man Lok would tell the group to do this as a way to get rid of the smell of decaying flesh that was growing into the apartment. Chan Man Lok would even wake up Ah Fong by holding a bag of entrails over her face and shaking it in front of her. And when she woke up and saw the bag of organs, he would tell her to place them into a pot and boil them so to get rid of the smell. She would then take the bag of entrails over to the stove, where Cho would be on the stove taking a wooden spoon stirring a pot that would have Fan Man Yi's head inside of it. And when Fong had walked over, Cho would look at her and tell her, "Why don't you come over here and take a look at this?" And Fong would say that she originally was too frightened to even take a peek, and Cho would reassure her and say, "Just think of it as a horror movie." And Fong would listen to Cho, and she would just kind of lean over and peek into the pot, and she would later say that it indeed looked like something out of a horror movie. The entire process would take about 10 hours, and by this time the group was starting to get hungry and had started discussing about fixing themselves something to eat. Now, another point about this is how any of them were able to have a stomach strong enough to eat while this is going on is beyond me. So the group would take another pot of noodles and place it on the stove that they were already boiling the body parts of Fan Man Yi. And it also should be noted, for their pot of soup, Cho would actually use the same wooden spoon that he was using to stir the pot that contained Fan Man Yi's skull in, and put it in directly into the same pot to the pot of noodles that they would actually eat later on for dinner. And even more so, they actually ate their fill of noodles. By the time that they were done, the head of Fan Man Yi that was originally in the pot was nothing but bones. And Locke would instruct the group that after they were done with the boiling, to place her skull inside of a Hello Kitty mermaid plushie that was laying on the bed. And the skull would not be the only thing that they would place inside this plushie, as they would also stick one of Fan Man-Yi's tooth inside of the plushie and some various other organs inside the plushie as well. What was originally not put into the plushie, they would keep in the pots and pans and place them in the refrigerator that the police would find later. And everything else would be completely discarded into dumpsters outside the apartment. By all accounts, the three men had pretty much convinced themselves that they had gotten away with murder. But what they had not counted on was the consciousness of a 13-year-old girl who, after a year of being haunted by the guilty conscience of hurting and beating and brutalizing this poor woman, had finally gotten the better of her. And Fong would eventually tell the police in May of 1999, which is where we left off in the beginning of our story. I wanted to also make a side note that when the police had gathered all the information and the confession of Ah Fong and they collected all the evidence, they would not waste any time arresting the three men, and it really would not take them long, as they would find them on this type of like this little street kind of restaurant area in Hong Kong, where the three men were just casually sitting down laughing and having a dinner. Which is another disgusting thing about this, is they were just casually laughing and enjoying a meal, something that they would not even allow Fan Man-Yi to have when she was alive. And regardless of the amount of atrocities that Ah Fong had committed against Fan Man-Yi, the police would actually give her a deal, and this plea deal is really disgusting, as they would say in the plea that if she agreed to testify against all men, they would give her complete immunity from her crimes. The trial itself would actually be a pretty big thing, considering just how grim and disgusting the case was, as Hong Kong has a reputation of being a fairly crime-free country, as China and Hong Kong itself only holds about 1% of crime that's committed, and that is everything considering petty criminality and even murder and rape. The trial would take about a month's time, and during this time, Ah Fong would take the stand, and she would not only testify against the three men, she would in great grisly detail discuss of every sickening thing they would do to this poor woman. Ah Fong would make the statement that she didn't care who she had to point out to let them know what they had done. All she wanted was for the hauntings to stop so that she could finally find peace. Another unfortunate aspect is the courts could not agree on what to charge the men with, because from the state the body was in when it was found, it could not be conducted that there was abuse done or drug overdose. And by the accounts of everything went on, even because of the fact, the judge wasn't having any of it, and he would later say the public is entitled to protection from people like you. They would even bring in psychiatrists, and they would describe all four as just being pure evil. And the judge would sentence all three to life of imprisonment with a possibility of parole after 20 years, but there was no chance of any of them men seeing the light of the day. That is for a fact, unlike Cho. Cho would actually be released after 20 years, but he would be back in prison, as he would get a job as a waiter, to where he would be immediately arrested for groping a 10-year-old girl's breast, and the police, sickeningly, would only give him 12 months. Fan Man-Yi's ex-husband would actually be present and would be fairly satisfied with the verdict. And Hong Kong has made great strides to keep Fan Man Yi's memory alive, as every year on her birthday, they come out with a night vigil to celebrate her life.